dugsiga boardingka iyo maalinlaha ah ee Amano Boarding and Day School.
From Amano Boarding and Day School, my name is Teacher Moses. Welcome our Form 2 class. Today I'll be teaching. I'll be continuing with the last lesson that we had about conditionals. Remember that we learned last time what is a conditional sentence. Conditional sentences are sentences that begin with if. They have two parts. One has if, and the other two has the results of what the first what happens in the first part. So if it rains, I will plant crops. I will plant my crops. If it rains, I will plant my crops. That is an example. So we learned about what is a conditional sentence, and we learned the first conditional. We also learned how many types of conditional sentences we have, and we did the first one, and I said that we are going to continue with the second one this time, which is the first conditional. Please make sure that you do the assignment that will be attached today in your account, into your account. Make sure that you do the assignment carefully and submit. Thank you so much and welcome back. So just for a recap, what is the first conditional? What is the first conditional? What is the first conditional? The objectives are just like the same as last time. Define conditionals and correctly use the first conditional. Last time we used the zero conditional, and today we are going to learn the first conditional and maybe try and compare both of them, first and zero conditional. So definitions, just for recap, this is just recap, we already did this. A conditional sentence is based on the word if. There are always two parts to a conditional sentence. One part begins with if and to describe a possible situation, and the second part which describes the consequence, the outcome of what happens in the if clause. So there are two clauses here. The first one begins with if, and the other one is the consequences, or what happens because of the action that took place, or the possibility that happens in the first clause that contains if. So for example, if it rains, we get wet. If it rains, we'll get wet. If it rains, we will get wet. Now there are four types of conditionals. We did that. There are four types of conditionals. The zero conditional, the first conditional, second conditional, and the third conditional. Now we already did this last week, and this week we are doing the first conditional. Then next week we shall continue with the second conditional. So first conditional. Now the form for the form for the first conditional is almost the same with the zero conditional. There's just a very slight, a small change. The first part, the if clause, has if and present simple. If and present simple. For example, if it rains. For example, if it rains. I want to give an example here. If it rains, that is present simple. If it rains, comma, I will get wet. I will get wet. So in the first conditional, it's almost the same with the zero conditional. It's only that now in this first conditional we use will or can or must or an imperative form, or we use the imperative form. Now we also need to remember that in the first conditional, the first clause has 50% possibility, but the second clause is always 100% certainty that if this happens, this must happen. If the first clause happens, then there must be a consequence. If it rains, it is 100% that we will get wet. So there is 100% certainty. There is 100% certainty. The first conditional has the present simple after if, then the future simple in the other clause. So in the other clause we have the future simple. So first clause, the one with if, it has simple present and then the future simple in the next one. If it rains, I will get wet. Okay? If it is used to talk about things which might happen in the future. So this clause, this conditional is used to talk about things which might happen in the future. Of course, we can't know what will happen in the future, but this describes possible things that could easily come true. For example, if it rains, I won't go to the park. If I study today, I'll go to the party tonight. If I have enough money, I will buy some new shoes. She'll be late if the train is delayed. She'll miss the bus if she doesn't leave soon. So carefully check on those examples. Now, if you don't listen, you will never learn. If you don't listen, you will never learn. That is the first conditional. So if you don't listen, you will never learn. I think there's another picture. If I use my smartphone every day, I will have eye problems. If I use my smartphone every day, I will have smart problems. Now, if you can check what we have said, if I use present simple tense and then I will have simple future tense, will have eye problems. There is another. Okay, now we want to compare the two conditionals that we have learned. The two conditionals that we have learned. First versus zero conditional. The first conditional describes a particular situation, whereas the zero conditional describes what happens in general. So the first conditional is very clear. Take this very carefully and clearly, that the first conditional describes a particular situation, while the zero conditional describes what happens in general. So there is generalization with the zero conditional, but there is specific and there is particular situation. It refers or describes to a particular situation, the first conditional. For example, zero conditional, in zero conditional, if you sit in the sun, you get burned. If you sit in the sun, you get burned. Here I'm talking about every time a person sits in the sun, the burning is a natural consequence of the sitting. Now, but first conditional, if you sit in the sun, you will get burned. Here I'm talking about what will happen today. Another day might be different. So first conditional, if you sit in the sun, you will get burned. If you sit in the sun, you get burnt. So this is general. It is general. General, it is talking about any person. Every time a person sits in the sun, you get burnt. So it is generalizing people every time, every time generalizing the time and the people. Every time a person sits in the sun, the burning is a natural consequence. But for the first conditional, if you sit in the sun, you will get burned. So here I am talking about what will happen today. Today, if you sit in the sun, you will get burned. Today, another day might be different. So specifically for this day, if you sit in the sun, you will get burnt, because today probably it's very hot. You do that assignment. So and also don't forget what we have learned. Just a recap of what we have learned. Just a quick recap of what we have learned about the differences or the difference between the first conditional and zero conditional. The first conditional describes as a specific or a particular situation, whereas the zero conditional is general. So, and there is an example there. Zero conditional: if you sit in the sun, you get burnt. Here, I'm talking about every time a person sits in the sun. But in the first conditional, if you sit in the sun, you will get burnt. Here, I am talking about what will happen today. Another day we might be different. So, thank you so much for having me again. Make sure this is an example of another sentence in first conditional, that if we say sorry, they will put us down. If we say sorry, they will put us down. So thank you so much. That is the end of our lesson. Thank you for